Good evening, and thank you for attending this evening. I'm Chuck Manning. I'm the chairman of the board of the Forest Fire Lookout Association. And on behalf of the Flathead Community College Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, along with the Bob Marshall Wilderness Foundation, the Montana, Wilderness Association, and of course our organization, the Forest Fire Lookout Association, we welcome you. This evening we're going to start out basically with Becky Lomax. Becky is going to introduce Susan, but first I would like to give a little bit of information about Becky. Becky Lomax grew up hiking and backpacking in many wilderness areas in the state of Washington. During the past several decades in Montana, she has written for magazines and newspapers about hiking trails in the northern fringes of the Bob Marshall Wilderness and Great Bear Wilderness. And in addition to her writing a moon guidebook, and that was entitled Glacier National Park. Becky has also authored 2 additional moon guidebooks, those being Yellowstone and the Grand Teton National Parks, and her newest book is the U.S. National Parks, where she romps through approximately 59 national parks, some with wilderness designations. So with that, I would like to introduce Becky, and she will introduce Sue. Thank you.
Is this on now?
No.
I should test mine. Oh, mine works. Does this work now? Oh, hello. Yeah. So, thank you very much. Part of the reason I'm here to interview Sue for this program is that I had the pleasure of working with Sue in developing some of the book. And it was really fun to work with her on the project. And it's kind of fun now to be able to see the thing in print after 10 years and celebrate with her on it. What I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about Sue and a little bit about what it means to be in the wilderness with Sue. What we experience in wilderness, that is accepting challenges, persevering, and sometimes even getting lost, serves as a learning experience for us to handle the challenges that arise in our lives. And for Sue Purvis, this has definitely been the case. Her experiences in the wilderness have shaped her life both professionally and personally. I'd like to share a quick story from her childhood friend, Sarah. And as sophomores in high school, Sarah and Sue went with Sarah's dad and 2 sisters on a backpacking trip into the Bob Marshall Wilderness. Sue had never even seen the Rocky Mountains, and she had never been backpacking before. So she goes off on this adventure. It's in early June, it pours rain, and some of the snowdrifts are up to their knees. And they were all instructed to keep their gear inside the tents at night, secure from critters. Well, one night Sue doesn't do that. She decides to leave her boots outside the tent to dry. And in the morning, one boot is missing. So how is she going to hike? After a considerable search, they found it in some nearby brush with the cuff and half of the boot chewed up. Not by a grizzly bear, but by a marmot. Sue wore the boot anyway and made it through the rest of the trip with it strapped to her foot. This perseverance is at the core of who Sue is, in all aspects of her life. As a wilderness medicine expert, she worked on documentaries for National Geographic, BBC, and Discovery channels. She's also gone to, let's see if I can get this right, the coldest, the hottest, and the highest environments in the world to work on projects there. She's also, in 2003, was awarded the Congressional Record, is that correct? Okay. For her search dog work in finding 2 men in 2 separate avalanches in 3 days. And last year, Sue was inducted into the Explorers Club, This elite organization has inducted only 800 women in the world, women like Jane Goodall and Margaret Mead.
Wow.
So tonight, Sue is here to share her memoir, Go Find: My Journey to Find the Lost and Myself. I had the pleasure of helping her with drafting this. I mentioned earlier it took 10 years for her to work through the project. And I want to say that's just one more example of Sue's perseverance. She stuck with it until she worked all the way through getting it published, and it's now got the book out. So I'm just going to introduce Sue Purvis here and ask her to come up, and we're going to start firing some questions at her. You ready, Sue?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Big shout out to the agencies involved, and I didn't even get a chance to talk to you guys out in the hallway, and I'm like, I need to know what everybody's doing. I guess I'm gonna have to go to the next series next year. And I want to thank Chell for bringing me along. My book came out in October, and he was one of my first readers, and he called me right away, and he's like, I want to bring you to the college and give this talk. So I've been waiting like 5 long months for this chance to speak, so thank you very much, you guys. I really appreciate it. What we're going to do, I have a few slides, and then I invited Becky to be here because she is one of my mentors, and as we go through life, mentors are really important, and I wanted her to be a part of this because we worked for a short period of time really intensely on structuring this book. Raise your hand if you've written a book. Few people, and raise your hand if you, by golly, you're going to write a book before you die. Yay! Yay! The only rule is don't quit. We're not going to sit down. We're here to, interact and entertain, and we're a bunch of clowns anyway, right?
Right.
And then also thank to Flathead Valley Community College and the bookstore for being here. I teach here. Becky has taught here, so this is like homecoming. It's really great to be here. And let's see, what else was I going to say here? Okay, so my publisher asked me to do a story right before my book came out, and it turns out last summer I was crossing over the Continental Divide, and it was hailing, the rainbow came out, and I can't get away with this little sneaky tidbit of information, but I tell everybody, like when I leave Montana, well, I'm on the Triple Divide, but I know this crowd knows that I'm not on the Triple Divide, right, because there's no road on the Triple Divide, so I'm kind of close. So where's the Triple Divide? In Glacier Park, and what does the Triple Divide mean? Yeah, it's a watershed for 3 waterways, so I had to put that in there because that's pretty cool. I was actually on my way to the Blackfeet Reservation to do a Sundance ceremony for 4 days.
Quick question.
Cool. Yeah.
It hailed and the rainbow came out. I just want to know that for you, after it hails, does the rainbow always come out?
That's a great question. I'm going to have to think about that. Okay, so, all right.
You ready for question one? Okay. So my parents introduced me to wilderness when I was a kid. We went hiking and backpacking. Actually, I grew up thinking that's what everybody did. So Sue, tell me about the influence of your parents on you regarding wilderness.
Yeah, one of the reasons why we're here is to talk about wilderness. I mean, obviously, it's a huge crowd of people that love being out in the outdoors. So I really want to dedicate this talk right now to my mama bear. My mama just passed away 12 days ago. And that little bugger, she stayed alive until I got this book published. She'd be like, when are you going to get that goddamn book published? She was hanging on. And I had a chance to go back home. I did like 8 or 9 events in my hometown, which is right here in northern Michigan. I grew up on the shores of Lake Superior. This is my wilderness. My mom actually did not like the wilderness. She married my dad, who was a fish biologist, and he spent all his time on Lake Superior. And the only way they were going to ever hang out is if she got into the boat with her curlers on, and she maybe did that for 2 years and then she never really went outside ever again. So you have to ask, well, where, you know, did I get my sense of adventure from? I'll get there in a minute, but I wanted to read, can you guys mind if I read my dedication to my mama? Because she just passed, and I think even this dedication kept her alive for many years. Oh no, did you rip the page out? Where is it? Oh, awkward. Okay, to Mom, who really cares about all my dreams, achievements, and secrets besides you? I walk through this world knowing your love lives on my sleeves. I wear it every day. You've offered me 3 gifts for a meaningful life: to love, to laugh, and to surround myself with supportive friends who care and listen. When I close my eyes, I feel your embrace and big smile. Since I've left home, you've answered my telephone calls even when I was worlds away. So let's hear it to our moms, right? Yeah. So I grew up in northern Michigan on the shores of Lake Superior. This was my little isolated world. And I kind of did mom things, right? Because my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So I just remember being put in the playpen. You guys remember the playpens from the 60s? And Mom was ironing, and she had the soap opera going. And I was like the dog in the cage. She might have thrown me a few toys once in a while and a few cookies to keep me quiet. And then I'd be like, get me out, you know? And so I did, like, you know, beauty pageants and dancing. And then this other shot here is actually the largest wooden ice structure in North America at the time. And this was, you know, I was kind of a rink rat. But my dad actually introduced me to skiing. I started skiing right about the time I started writing in my journal. I knew in the 3rd grade I always wanted to write a book. And I always felt like I never had a story to tell until recently. I just lived a story I needed to tell, and I wrote it. But I got my adventure from my dad. He was a biologist who went fiddlehead picking. I noticed they're selling fiddleheads at 3rd Street Market now. I can't even believe it. And we went mushroom picking, you know, digging for bottles, and I spent a lot of time on a water with my dad, and he's still alive today, so he got to see me publish my book as well. So why, the one thing, you know, when I decided to write this book, and people ask me why I wrote the book, or how did I get involved in the wilderness, is I said to myself, I didn't want the life that my mother had. I didn't want to be that woman in the old 100-year-old mining house, ironing clothes, taking care of 3 kids, and raising a family. That was not in my programming. And so I started this life of adventure.
So your life of adventure is in your book. It's your memoir. And one of the characters in the memoir is wilderness. You coming up against wilderness, and the wilderness throws as many challenges at you as it does the people you rescue in the book. So tell us about some of your wilderness experience.
So this is me when I was 15 years old, coming out west in the 70s. I'd never seen the mountains, and we were going backpacking in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. You know, are you guys noticing we're all in cotton, except our guide, he's like in wool. And actually, he was a fire lookout in the 60s. I'm just thinking about this. And for one summer, he was getting his PhD. Bob McClellan, he lives in Missoula now, and he was a fire lookout. So one day he wanted to bring his daughters back, and plus me, to explore the Bob Marshall. So that's really where I fell in love with Montana and the wilderness. And here's what I'll say about that. You know, kids are lazy. Even back, you know, in the 60s, we were kind of lazy. We were fed. We didn't really have to be responsible for anything. And then I'm brought out there, and the wilderness, you know, so to speak, kicked my butt. I had to grow up very quickly. There was nobody washing my dish, really nobody feeding me, no one keeping my feet dry, making sure my boots were put away. I had to do that, and if I didn't do that, I was going to suffer and suffer hard. The classic one is, gee, Sue, don't eat your bag of gorp on the first day because you'll have nothing left for the next 10 days, right? You guys remember that? What do we do for young kids? We don't know what consequences are, and so we gobble up our gorp. And so the wilderness became my teacher, and it was the first time in my life I was really challenged by anything. And I thought, wow, I think I want a life in the outdoors. But back then, you guys, in the early 70s, and you guys know, like, what jobs were available for women. You know, nobody coached us on jobs in the outdoors. So I had to be creative later in life to figure out how I was going to make a living in the outdoors.
So tell us how you went from that to entering the program at University of Montana.
Yeah, so it turns out I fell in love with Montana. I decided to come to the school at the University of Montana. Raise your hand if you're an alumni. Any alumni? Yeah, and have you heard of this program called the Wilderness and Civilization Program? I was a 17-year-old college student, and I got to the University of Montana early. My mom threw me in the car with some neighbor who was coming out here. So I got to school early, and I was walking around campus, and I learned about this program called the Wilderness and Civilization Program. It was in 1980, and collectively, as 20 students, we go out with our professors into the wilderness. So we went to the Ear Mountain, the Rocky Mountain front. Amy, it sounds like you've done that program.
I know it, yeah.
Okay, did that. And there I started journaling again. I was, what is it like to be a 17-year-old woman on the top of Ear Mountain at sunrise, looking out at the vast plains, thinking about, what it was like 200 years ago, and contemplating on, what's my future? How will I go? How will I be? How will I make a living? And who will I become? And I still have those journals, and I never knew what to do with them. And eventually, I write about it, in my book. And so that was really a start to my career. Well, what are some of the jobs women can do, say, in the mid-'80s in the outdoors? Like be a forester, what else? Anybody else have jobs in the mid-'80s in the outdoors?
Fight fires.
Fight fires, women?
Oh yeah, we had a few of them.
Yeah, maybe just a few. Yeah, like I think I just met the first, or talked on the phone to one of the first ones. She wrote a book about it. Horse packing. Yeah, great. That's gnarly.
Recreation was the big.
Yeah, like working at the park with the man suit on. Yeah. Becky, what were your options? We talked about this. Were you
There was actually a test that we took when we were juniors in high school, and I answered almost every question thinking, outdoors, outdoors, outdoors. How can I answer these? It told me to go into nursing. I've told all my friends the same thing too. I think it was rigged. So, Sue, connect us with...
Okay, go ahead.
I want to get you to hear about becoming a geologist.
Yeah, I know.
Because that's how you did it.
Yeah, can I read you just a short passage? You guys want to hear a little bit? I'm just going to read twice, not very long. I don't want anybody falling asleep. Are you guys good so far? Okay, this is my introduction. Actually, I had to write my introduction after I sold my book and it was about to be published. My agent said, oh my God, you got to write an introduction. I'm like, okay. Never ends. It never ends. Okay. This is my introduction. I'm going to just kind of step into it mid-sentence here. I first learned to use a compass at the age of 10 when my dad took me fishing for lake trout on his 20-foot boat in Lake Superior. With his grown-up hands resting on mine, he helped me guide the wheel. Honey, keep the needle pointing north and drive straight ahead. It was a big responsibility for a little girl needing to stand up on her tiptoes to see out the boat's windshield. I knew that if I screwed up and got off course, especially in the fog, we'd collide with the white rocks and drown. I kept my eye on that needle and told Pops, I'll never lose my way. When I was 15, I learned to read a U.S. Geological Survey 7.5-minute quadrangle map? Raise your hand if you know how to read one of those. Probably a lot of the people in the room. During my first backpacking trip to the Bob Marshall Wilderness in Montana, as a teenager from the flatlands of northern Michigan, the grandness of the Rocky Mountains overwhelmed me. I stood at the trailhead wearing a too heavy backpack and holding a flat sheet of paper the size of a small poster. How the heck am I going to read a map? I asked our bearded guide. I have no idea where I am. You guys ever felt that way before? Back then, I was a follower. I took no responsibility for where I was or where I was going, but I wanted to learn. Then, I'll just move forward here. Years later, years of practice, hundreds of hours of navigating, hiking, backpacking, and skiing and backpacking trips allowed me to gain fluency in map and compass reading. It's probably one of the reasons I would later become interested in geology and gold exploration. I could plot my location on a map anywhere in the world. You want to know the honest truth? The only reason why I got into geology, because there was like 2 women and 50 guys. I was going to write that in, but I didn't. So, I became a geologist, and right after college, there was really no jobs for geologists, so I became a survival instructor for 2 years. So, and then I got my feet in geology. So I look for gold in Latin America for a living, but I did actually do a couple years of gold exploration in Montana. I remember living at the Super 8 in Helena, Montana for months on end, you know, as we were digging around. So my husband and I ended up managing a gold exploration operation in Latin America, specifically the Dominican Republic. Yeah, so but can anybody tell me what those are and where that is? Who said that? Nice. And where are those located? Where's that outcrop located? Grinnell. Nice. Lolly. There we go. Okay. Okay.
So you've led an adventurous life, especially some of your stories that you tell in the book about being in Latin America searching for gold. But at one point you go, it's not enough, it ain't doing it for me. So what made you switch to search and rescue here from gold digging?
Yeah, so how many, raise your hand if you've read, there's quite a few people in the room who's read my book, right? Mm-hmm. I know the ladies at the Emmanuel Lutheran home. Yeah, you guys are all passing the book around. I get to go speak at your facility soon. That'll be really exciting. So thanks for reading that. So my story takes place in Crested Butte, Colorado. This is the last great Colorado ski town. Kind of looks like Whitefish, doesn't it? It's a small little mining town. And the one nice thing about working in Latin America is we could live anywhere in the world, so we chose to live in Crested Butte. My house was at 9,500 feet, so I always had 1 foot in the snow, and I had 1 foot in the mud in the Dominican Republic. So every book has what we call an inciting incident. So I was looking for gold in Latin America with my husband. We had just gotten married, but something was missing in my life, and I didn't know what it was, but I know you know what it was. And so I decided, because I was from the Midwest and our ski run was 600 feet vertical, that I was going to be on ski patrol. I'm like, I think I need to go save lives now. Because the gold, looking for gold didn't mean anything to me. I didn't care about money, and mining was like rape and pillage of the land, right? We're here to protect it and to be gentle with it. And I thought, there's got to be something else I can do, but I didn't have a pathway. How am I going to make a living ski patrolling? And so when I was on ski patrol in Crested Butte, I learned about this avalanche that happened across the street from this world-class ski resort. It was Sunday morning at 9 in the morning, and 3 little toddlers were playing outside. They were 4, 4, and 6 years old. They were outside one of these condos waiting for a shuttle bus to bring them back to Houston, Texas, where they lived, when all of a sudden this wall of snow came down and buried all 3 little kids. Can you imagine? They got stuck there because of the storm. So the dad was out in the parking lot putting the luggage into the shuttle bus because it had just arrived, and now the 3 kids are missing. And I'm like, like, I didn't know anything about avalanches. I didn't know anything about wilderness medicine. I didn't know anything about how dogs worked in the snow. And they're telling me, you know, the people showed up just probing and, you know, with swimming pool hooks, whatever they had in their cars or nearby. They found 2 of the kids in respiratory arrest, which means they weren't breathing, they were blue. Rescuers did some CPR and they survived. Then the ski patrollers were telling me they brought their avalanche dog in. It was a German Shepherd. I'm like, oh my God, what did the dog do? And they're like, the dog couldn't find the last boy. I'm like, what do you mean the dog couldn't find the last boy? Isn't that the dog's job, right? Isn't that what search dogs are supposed to do? And the answer they gave me wasn't good enough. I kept pressing them, like, tell me why the dog couldn't find him. And it was in that moment I thought, what if I got a dog and trained it to save a life? And I vowed to never leave anyone behind. So I made this huge promise. That year I buried my husband, and a huge promise to this little puppy that's 5 weeks old, Tasha, that we were going to train to be the best dog team we could possibly be and never leave anyone behind. How's that for an insight into it?
It's quite the goal.
Oh, my second or third chapter, my first day with my dog, we ended up at hunting camp. And it was at that moment I didn't really know she was, what our future would be, but it was that day, sitting on that elk, she would learn the difference between the scent of a dead animal versus the scent of a human. And she would have, her career depended on her ability to differentiate between the 2 of them.
So Tasha is cute, isn't she? But she's a working dog up there. And one of the things, when you read Sue's book, you find out that the relationship between Tasha and Sue is absolutely amazing. And in fact, the relationship between Tasha and Sue is almost more important than Sue's relationship with her husband, which says something too. Sue, do you want to comment on either relationship or neither?
One of my pitches, when I had to sell my story, I looked at my agent and I said, here's how I can answer that. How come it's easier for me to jump out of the side of a helicopter at 13,000 feet with my avalanche dog in my lap to find a dead guy than it is to talk to my husband about our relationship together? You guys, ladies, do you get that?
Yes.
A little bit? So why is it then we can, you know, in my particular case, I could have an incredible communication and bond with my dog, and we could read each other's language and communicate without words, yet I've been in this marriage for, you know, many years, and I can't even communicate with my most important person in my life. How the heck does that happen? So I have to answer that in my book, right? And really, at the end of the day, is our ability to communicate broke down a long time ago, and we could never recover from that. How's that for an answer?
That was a good answer, actually.
Yeah.
When we were working on the book, we kept coming back to this issue. The husband, what do you want to say? And Sue to be towed around a lot of stuff for a while, and then I would say eventually she just decided to hit it in the face with, this is what happened. And you know, that's another one of those situations where she has persevered. to get through something, and whatever happened there, she got through it. Yay for you. So, going on here, what we experience in wilderness, accepting challenges, persevering, and sometimes getting lost, serves as a learning experience to handle the challenges that arise in our lives. So Sue, what's one of those wilderness experiences from the book that really framed your ability to handle challenges that have come at you since?
Righty, I have an answer for that. Do you guys mind if I read you a bit of chapter 1? So here I am, imagine, like when you look at this photo, this is me, I'm taking this photograph, and my 60-pound Avalanche dog is on my lap. It's June in Colorado, and I'm flying to the scene, and there's a person up there. This is pretty gnarly, isn't it? So, this is how my book starts, and it was probably the most important mission of my life. Chapter 1, Lastditch Effort. Summer of 2005, you guys know, do you know where you were in 2005? Hard to remember this stuff, isn't it? Ouray, Colorado. Have you been to Ouray, Colorado, anyone? Okay. If the helicopter shifts, we're dead. Dead like the guy we're looking for. So much can go wrong up here. Peering out the open door, I look down at the fast-moving, unforgiving terrain. Far above the tree line, where the air is thin, volcanic rocks break into huge spires and fins. Freeze-thaw cycles have crumbled the cliffs into strange gargoyle-like shapes, and every crevice is filled with snow. Tasha, my black Labrador retriever and avalanche dog partner, is wedged between the pilot and me. Her bum presses against the pilot's hip, while she digs her furry elbows into my thighs and settles her barrel chest onto my lap. Her webbed feet, splayed wide from years of digging and avalanche debris, dangle off my legs and out the helicopter's open doorway. In our haste to hot load the helicopter moments ago, I had nixed Tasha's restraining device. As the helicopter blade shaved air closer to the towering 14,000-foot peak, I vice grip her neck with my arm, pulling her close, concerned she'll try to jump or scramble onto the pilot's lap. Wiggling my toes inside my ski boots helped to keep them from falling asleep. That's all I dare move. If Tasha or I make a sudden movement, the two-seat crop duster helicopter used to spray pesticides on cornfields might fall from the sky. We're about to land by putting one skid onto the couloir, a steep, narrow gully hemmed in by sheer cliff walls on the upper flanks of White House Mountain in the San Juan Mountains of southwestern Colorado. So let me just point out to you guys, there's a man down here, he's right there, and he is chiseling out our landing zone. You see him there? He's right there, to give you some scale. Look at what we do, right? By the way, I'll tell you, it'll come up here in a minute. As we near a forbidding landing site, I try to avoid looking down at the 4,000-foot drop, where dawn just turned to daylight over the towering evergreen trees, now shrunk to matchsticks. Warm air turns to cold, and my knuckles are blue as I squeeze the grab handle above the door frame. 39 days earlier, a single-engine plane crashed on White House Mountain, killing all 4 passengers. Richard Mills, the man we're looking for, his 4-year-old son, and his parents. Days of bad weather coupled by avalanche hazard and extreme terrain had thwarted any rescue effort. Eventually, members of the local search and rescue team, Ouray Mountain Rescue, were transported to the wreckage one by one. Over several weeks of searching, they found, strewn over a half-mile-long path, pieces of twisted metal, clothing, children's books, and 3 partially buried bodies. The team located all but Richard. Then, deeming the recovery mission too dangerous, the local sheriff had suspended the search until now. All hope is on my 60-pound retriever and 5'3" me. We're the last-ditch effort. And we've got 1 hour to find him. After a decade as a search and rescue dog team, Tasha has a few gray hairs on her chin, but still looks and acts like a pup. In human years, she's 70, and I'm 43. Her career is almost over, and then mine will be too. Tasha and I are one of a few elite, high-altitude volunteer search and rescue dog teams in the United States. We live in Crested Butte, Colorado, and we don't even get paid for our work, not even a bag of kibble. Yet here we are, risking our lives. Inside the helicopter, Tasha's silky ears flap against her blocky head as air blasts through my side of the helicopter. Her chest swells and retracts, panting breathlessly as the air thins. Her tongue is pasty white. Her breath stinks, and I can't tell if her excessive panting is from her nerves or the food she gobbled down last night when she nosed open my suitcase and ate a week's worth of food. Anybody have a black lab? She ate the plastic bag too. Her bloated belly feels like a stuffed sausage, and I want to wring her neck. How could she do this to me? 10 years of training, sacrifices, and proving our worth in a community of doubters. I was the first dog team in the area, like the size of Connecticut. Any hoping I would fail. This mission is the pinnacle of our career. And because of Tasha's gluttony, we might fail if we don't die first. The pilot reduces power, and the helicopter edges closer to the mountain. Boulders as big as cars litter our search area with fresh gray rubble. Evidence of the violent daily rockfall. Because of the danger, we only have 1 hour to get in and out. The morning sun shining on the avalanche path will cause snow to melt, releasing rocks that could pierce our flesh and crush our bones. Sue, see that speck down there? The pilot's voice crackles in my headphones. That's Bill. He points to the narrow, snowy couloir in front of us. He's chopping out our landing zone. The pilot stares straight ahead at the colossal mountain and concentrates on placing one skid onto the landing strip, no taller or wider than me. A sharp wobble of the helicopter jolts me with adrenaline. My body jerks and I cling to Tasha. I don't dare move. To calm my nerves, and to her nerves too, I hum a soothing melody into her ear. One she's been hearing for a decade. Girl, black dog, do-do-do. I love you. I shut my eyes, praying the blades won't hit the slope. I mean, look how close those blades are to that slope, right? The chopper edges towards the sheer wall. Somewhere on this peak, a family's despair is buried beneath tons of avalanche debris. Will my family soon join in their despair? Suddenly, I spot Bill running toward the rock wall, protecting himself from the rotors and shielding his face from the growing blizzard of blowing snow. He's engulfed in a white tornado whirling beneath the chopper blades, and I lose sight of him. The helicopter's skid thunks onto the landing zone. Tasha jerks and digs her nails into my legs. It's painful, but I don't dare move a muscle. My eyes fixate on the pilot for direction. He focuses on the blade whapping an arm's length away from the snow. Time to go, he yells. Yanking off my helmet with one hand, I pin Tasha into my lap with the other. The deafening roar of the engine makes giving verbal commands to Tasha impossible. I rely on our years of communicating through eye contact and hand signals to show her when to exit. Bill crawls on his hands and knees to meet us. He waits in a crouch, as directed by the pilot, until the bird steadies. You're going to have to jump, he yells. Jump? I worry about Tasha's distended stomach. She could rupture her guts when she lands on her belly. Then I remember the raspy plea of Ed Jones, the uncle of the missing man. Sue, I'm not leaving Colorado until all my family members are accounted for. As desperation had convinced me I had to come out here. We're his last hope. 10 years ago, when I blindly launched into this volunteer search dog career, I promised I would never leave anyone behind. I've kept my word so far. The helicopter shuttles, I clutched the handle, and for an instant, I questioned what I'm doing up here. My husband's pissed. He told me not to come, tried to order me not to get on the helicopter. Yet here I am, in the path of an avalanche, risking Tasha's life and my own. Somehow I find it easier to jump out of the side of a helicopter than to talk to my husband about our relationship. Is my ego driving this? My promise to the family? Or do I have something to prove? My eyes lock onto the pilot. He nods. Now, before I ease Tasha into Bill's extended arms, I look to her to tell me something, anything. Everything we've struggled for hinges on this moment. Her kind brown eyes, full of confidence and foggy cataracts, stare into mine. Her calmness calls my shaking body. Tasha, I whisper into her ear. Time to go. After cueing her with a wrist flick, she lunges out and spread eagles onto Bill's face and chest, knocking them backwards. The two regain their feet and together run towards the rock for protection. Slipping off my seat, I sit on the floor. One at a time, my boots find purchase on the icy skid. Slinging my pack over my shoulder, I let go of the safety handle and jump.
And you'll have to read the book to see the rest.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, I have the second part of the question, in case you forgot, and that was, okay, wilderness shapes us, and it teaches us things and gives us skills to handle other things in life. So my question is, how did this mission frame the rest of your life? The skills that you needed.
Yeah. That was the biggest challenge I had, and if you read the book, you'll find out that I achieved everything I set out to do. We never left anyone behind. We worked missions in water and wilderness and avalanche and victims of crime. But I became as lost as anybody I had ever found. How does that happen? And I got buried metaphorically in my own avalanche. And I end up losing my two most important relationships, which is my dog and my husband. I'm kind of telling you the end of the story, but which devastated me, because life wasn't supposed to go that way for me, right? Till death do us part. I made a promise to this man that I was going to, no matter how bad the relationship was, we were in it together. And, you know, dogs' lives are really short, so all of a sudden I lose, you know, everything. But in the process of losing things, my dog had one last mission for me, and that was she saved me from myself, which meant after a long period of being buried under my down feathers like an avalanche and not being able to go outside to care for her as she was dying, I had to get up, I had to get moving, I had to go back and, you know, be the person I was before all this tragedy happened to me, and know that, you know, we were just life is just a series of ups and downs, and we can't let one thing devastate us or overwhelm us. And so the book writing process was one of those challenges. I had to get up. You know, I ended up, you know, I thought I lost everything. I was so codependent on my husband that I thought I was worthless, no good. And, you know, the phone kept ringing. You know, I ended up, you know, going to the hottest, the coldest, the highest place on work. My business still thrives, but you know, and I'm sure you guys are going, God, you know, that's probably happened to me at some level. We all go through our metaphorical avalanche, and we have to get back up, because if we don't, we're going to die. So that's what, you know, really a lot of the story taught me. I'm kind of a helper now with people getting caught in their own avalanches and how they can get out of them. It's going to be okay.
Okay, thanks, Sue. So one of the things, you've gotten a lot of interesting responses to the book from people, and especially women. And can you share some of the responses that women have had, some of the things they've written to you?
Yeah, what did I want this book to do? If you guys are writing a book, you have to look at your book and say, what do you want this book to do? You know, I want to inspire people. I want people to follow find their passion, and then if they have purpose, to follow that up. I want to motivate people and get people out into the outdoors. I want them to get out in the wilderness and, you know, not get stuck into these traditional occupations or way of life. If they have purpose and passion, follow it. And so I get, I guess, kind of fan mail or text or whatever, you know, all different ways. But what I'm hearing from women is, mostly women, is, oh my God, Sue, thanks for sharing your story. And I'm so disappointed that I let myself down. I didn't follow my purpose or my passion. Life got in the way. And then, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, right? So it's helping people go, oh wait, what is it that I really want to do? And focus on it. Don't ever let anybody say you can't do it. I mean, I got so much pushback. First half of the book is all the pushback I got from everybody. You can't do that. You can't do that. You'll fail. And then, you know, we get strong. I get my mama bear comes out and say, oh, you know what? I'll show you. You know. So that's really, I'm hearing a lot from people saying, you know what? I'm going to get after it now. No one's going to say no. The reason why I put this up, I came to Montana to write this book. I got involved in a writing group, and I wrote it. It took me 10 years. I had lots of mentors, and when I sold my book, they brought me to New York City. So of 6 books on the outside of the Javits Center at the Book Expo USA, which is the largest book event in North America, I show up, I get out of the cab, and there's my book. And nobody told me any of this stuff. I'm like, holy crap. Like, that's pretty huge for a Montana author. And then the next week, I stayed in the studio and narrated my audiobook, which was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Jumping out of the helicopter was so easy. Writing the book was so easy. Sitting and reading my book, oh my God. It was really hard. So,
That looks like a fun picture. I want to go there right now.
That's to say, I think I found my way. I'm back on path?
Yeah, with Tasha.
Yeah,
Is that Tasha?
That is
Okay, cool. I love it. So talk a little bit about what writing the book, the process of writing the book, what that was like, and in some ways like wandering through a wilderness. Go for it.
Raise your hand if you guys are interested in writing. Yeah, so okay, what I learned from, I'm like, God dang it, if I can train a dog to save a life, I can write a book about it, right? And really what I learned, the processes are so similar. I didn't know how to train a dog. I didn't know how to care for a dog. I did not know anything about grammar, punctuation, putting a sentence together, or writing a book. And she's laughing because she goes, yeah, I was there for a lot of that. I don't know what happened in my high school writing course, but I don't think I showed up. So that was like my biggest fear is how could someone who has no skill set write a book? And so there's only 4 things you have to do as a writer. Read a lot, write a lot, hang out with writers, and study your craft. It's the same for training a dog. you've got to read a lot, hang out with dog handlers, and learn your craft. And so I spent, you know, I talk about the 10,000 hour rule. If you're going to be good at something, you got to put 10,000 hours in. So my dog and I spent 10,000 hours plus in the wilderness, right? Learning to communicate, learning to, you know, understand each other. And then I had to give her a job, which was to go find human beings, you know, like a huge, huge effort. So I have ADD, I'm hyperactive, and so for me to sit in a chair and write, I dedicate, or I thank Becky in my book, and I say, and thank you, Becky Lomax, in quotation marks, ass cracker, you know. She, you know, I had to, you know, show up and write, because if you don't show up and write, you're never going to finish. But it was really hard. I said to I remember probably the third year in writing my book, I had a questionnaire I had to fill out, like, what's your goal of this book? And I said, I want to be a New York Times bestseller. Okay, I go big. How do you know when you achieved your goal? What will that feel like, and what will it look like? Well, I found this piece of paper the other day, and I had written it like 7 years ago. You know what it said? I said, yeah, I wanted to be a New York Times bestseller. How do you know you achieved your goal? And I said, well, when I'm an alcoholic and I'm 30 pounds overweight. And I'm like, check, check, check. You know, like, so it's really a difficult thing for someone who doesn't, you know, we spend our time out hiking around and being active to all of a sudden sit in the chair. And then you want to quit. Who cares? Nobody knows about it. I'm a failure. Who would even care about this story? And then you just have to keep believing and surround yourself. So that's kind of, anything else you want to add here or there for some of it?
It was tough. Yeah, Sue worked really hard on this book, and you know, between the writing group that I originally met her in and then later working with her, it was, you know, when I went back, it was several years between those two,
Yeah.
I think. When I actually started working with her on it, and we're working through some of the material she'd written, I'm reading it and going, this is not the same writing I was looking at 3 years earlier. I mean, she had pushed herself through it to learn what she needed to learn to make it work. And to me, it was just speaking to everything in her book. That she tells all these stories, you know, over and over, they all involve perseverance on her part, and Tasha's part too. You've got to give the dog credit. But her writing did that too. I mean, that's exactly what she had to do to make this book happen. And it kind of blew me away when I came back to work with her on it, see the amazing difference between several years earlier and when we started up again on it to finish it.
So can I share something with you guys? Here's a little bragging rights. The book business is weird. You know, like, you got to put yourself out there. I'm like probably a social media whore because I'm like, oh, I got to sell the books. You know, isn't your publisher supposed to sell them? No, well, we are. If you want to write, you got to sell it. If we do anything, you got to sell yourself. So I decided to go on a little vacation in January. My book came out in October, and all of a sudden, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm sailing. Finally, I'm like, I want to go sailing. I've never been sailing before. And all of a sudden, I get a message saying that I'm number 4 in books. Michelle Obama's number 1. Tara Westover, who wrote Educated, is number 2, and Go Find's number 4. I'm like, holy crap! How'd that happen? So, you know, kudos to you know, people who believe in the book or reading the book. And I just had to sit there and go, huh? I can't really do much with it. So selling a book's really difficult. So I'm proud of that. The audiobook's doing well. It's in Kindle. And my paperback's coming out in September. So it's a big deal for my, you know, Montana writers. We need each other. And we.
I would say, if you watch her on Facebook, she has been like everywhere. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Lots of energy.
why I'm an alcoholic and 30 pounds overweight.
So we've been talking a lot about kind of wilderness as experiences in the wilderness being a metaphor for getting us to handle real life wilderness experiences. When we get stuck in those wildernesses like you were in when you were buried under your down comforter for a month and wouldn't get
8
out.
months.
8 months and wouldn't get out.
Just saying.
How do we rescue ourselves? Can you address that at all?
Yeah, because actually I want to talk about that maybe in an article. How did I rescue myself? Because raise your hand if you've thought you were going to die. Like you're so lost, so buried in grief or, personally, relationship-wise, right? We can get lost in a business, we can get lost in a relationship, on our journey, in so many different ways. I couldn't believe how devastated I was. I really thought my life was over. And I had to go care for my dog, so giving back and participating is a really big deal. But I did a lot of self-care and self-love. I did acupuncture. I stopped drinking. I exercised. I spent more time in the mountains. I did massage. I went and talked to a therapist. I did everything, and I started fasting and just trying to get out of my own way. And then I started to get involved in writing, and I've surrounded myself with these beautiful people who write. And I've been in this writing group for over a decade. I'm sure you know some of the women in my writing group, but we're like best friends, and we've been writing for over a decade. And people are getting their books published. So, I came to Montana to write. I didn't really know anybody here. And this beautiful community and the Flathead supported me through that.
So one question about women in the wilderness, and let me see if I can read what I wrote. Let's explore why women go out to the wilderness and the question of whether women go to wild places for different reasons than men, or is a wilderness a place where gender disappears?
Ooh, we can
Trying
have a
to
discussion
tackle
about
that one, Sue.
Yeah, I should be careful what I say because it's half men in here, but, men are probably going, I'm going to go conquer, I'm going to go kill that thing, I'm going to get the, however you guys go, right? And then, the women are like, la, la, we're just going to, would you guys agree?
Yeah.
That seems like a stereotype.
Somewhat, you get involved. It's interesting, or, just, I go there to contemplate and to we all have different reasons why we go. And we can kind of open that up for discussion. I think really probably gender kind of falls away, right? We go recreate and have fun in the backcountry.
And the wilderness becomes the teacher, as you said. Yeah. So last question here, and then we'll open it to the audience.
Yeah.
What would you recommend for all of us here to take home as our metaphorical wilderness challenge?
I put this up there. One of the most important things for me is to give back. And it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing of saving lives. It can be something very simple. I have been all around the world teaching wilderness medicine to the Sherpas, to the African guides, and I give back that way. And one day, when I was living here, I thought, I don't think I have to go around, I felt like Forrest Gump. I don't know if I have to go around the world anymore to give back. All I have to do is go 90 miles over the Continental Divide and drop into the Blackfoot Reservation and offer my services there for free. And then I'm like, well, I don't even know if I have to go 90 miles. I think I can maybe go to Kalispell or to Evergreen, or maybe just to Whitefish and see what needs to be done, who might need some help, how can, I give back what I've learned and empower others to find purpose and passion. So my wilderness biggest challenge to all of you is, I'm so glad you came back. I thought it was something I said. You know, what is it you're doing in your daily life or weekly life? It could be something small, it could be something big. You know, most of you guys are volunteers. I feel really honored that you guys showed up with all your stuff. You're volunteers. You do this because you love it. You care. You're trying to protect wild places. And keep paying it forward.
Thank you, that's a good one. So at this point, I think we'll open up to questions, if you have any for Sue, about her book, her life, or...
No one's going to raise right away.
Go
I want
ahead.
to learn more about the young boy that got lost. Obviously, he had panicked and slid. When you found him, he was in denial. And he said, I wasn't lost. Talk about
The process, so your question is, you know, what are the 5 phases of being lost, or the 5 phases of grief, which is really kind of how I frame my book, because I became lost once. And do you guys know the 5 phases of being lost or grieving? What are they? What's the first one? The first one is denial. I'm not lost. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not overweight. I'm not unhappy. Then what's the second phase as you further your lostness? Anger or panic. So these are the people who get lost in the woods and they start running around like they think they know the way, right? And then they get lost even more. What's the third part? Bargaining. Oh God, if you let the rain stop, I promise, I'll eat my Wheaties tomorrow morning, and, you start bargaining and, with yourself and with the greater world. That doesn't work. So then what happens as you get further into the abyss is you get depressed, right? Because you're like, oh my God, there's no way out. I am, I was in that space, I'm gonna die, right? So you just, but in the 5th phase is you have to either self-rescue or you will die, right? What I was learning in my book then, I had a lifeline with my dog, Tasha. We spent 4 hours in the middle of a blizzard at night looking for a lost 12-year-old hunter. My dog was tracking her through the snow, and he had a plan with his father that if anybody got lost, they were going to fire their shotgun or their rifle 3 times. That was to say, I'm over here and I'm lost, right? They had that plan. That's what they were going to do. And we find him in the dark at 5 in the morning, huddled under a tree, under a snag. And, one of the first things I said is, well, how come you didn't fire your rifle? And he looks at me and he's like, I'm not lost. And I'm like, and that was before I knew any of this stuff. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not lost? What are you doing here? In his mind, he didn't know why he was there. And I went, oh, that's like that first phase of denial. So I feel like I'm a denial expert now. I help people going, oh, look, you're so in denial about your situation. I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that.
Did you ever hear from him again?
Nope. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't hear from anybody. I did call the family of the kids that got buried because it was their 20-year anniversary. And I reached the mother whose kids survived. And she said every year those kids would draw, growing up, they would draw pictures of them being buried in that avalanche. And they've recovered and they're doing really well. They're, normal kids. She said her sister-in-law, who lost the 6-year-old, has never recovered. She doesn't talk about it. She's kind of in that phase of, her life is a mess. She doesn't want to talk about it. She can't get out of her way. It's really hard on her still, after all those years. And I just went back to Crested Butte. that hillside still sitting there. They kind of put a few fences up there. All the condos are still there. There's no warning signs notifying people that they're, living in avalanche danger, all the tourists.
How effective is a search dog if they're not working with their particular person?
Their handler?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be like saying how compatible is your wife with your best friend that they see, Again, it's all about fluency and reading and understanding both parties' behaviors. Because, yeah, it gets complicated. Now, I know a lot of ski area dogs trade out the handlers. I think like if, a husband and wife team were sharing a dog, that'd be one thing. It's hard. Things happen so fast. Even me as a handler, if I'm not paying attention and I look away for 10 seconds, I might miss all the information my dog's trying to tell me. So it's like super hyper-focused. And dogs make mistakes too. Yes?
What kind of dog do you have now?
I don't have a dog. But maybe soon. I'm in talks with a television production company, and I'm trying to get a new puppy, and our job is to go around the United States and Canada and see what other dog teams are doing, and might pose the question to my puppy, what's our next job? And it probably won't be search and rescue, but it might be something like looking for cancer or trying to detect exotic species. I mean, dogs are doing some really amazing things right now.
One more question. Oh, I'm sorry. What age do you have to train the dog for what you do? From when they're young, or can you take one that's a little older and then still teach them?
Well, the human's always the inconsistent, difficult partner. So the quicker and the sooner you can get the human with the dog, the better off the team will be. Now remember, dogs' lifespans are so short that you want to get them young so that you can start, creating teamwork. Like I could probably take a dog that's 2 years old now and probably train it because I have enough experience. I have my 10,000 hours in, but for a new handler, it's tough. Yeah. Was that what you're going to ask?
No, I just wanted to know what was the worst mistake you and your dog had made as a team.
The worst mistake, because I was not mentored, there was no other dog handlers in my county the size of Connecticut. So I always had to travel. The last thing I wanted to do, because I was commuting, was to travel. But the re-find is the most important thing. So you can send your dog out to say, I'll say go find, get it now, go find. To go find whatever that target. But they have to tell you that they found the person. So depending on the environment, right, we're working in water, we're working in snowstorms, we're working in avalanche, we're working in body parts, big parts. Your dog needs to be consistent. They need to find the source. Either they stay at the source and they, are really loud, they bark, or in the wilderness, they need to come back and tell us. We call that a re-find, right? You've seen that, like border collies are really good at that. So I never had a solid re-find. My dog wasn't, she was a retriever, but she didn't really care about coming back to me. And I'm like, how do I train this dog to tell me? And that set us back. I failed like 3 tests because she'd be like, I'm dumb, like, where are you, human? I'm like a half a mile away because she didn't come back and tell me. And then, that's like an automatic flunk. So getting that bounce back is huge.
So are you giving away that, are you going to write your second book and it's from Tasha's viewpoint?
Yeah, I'm going to write my second book from my dog's point of view. And hammer the human. Nancy.
Kind of a cheap question, but do you have flashbacks of some of your
So the first question was, do I have flashbacks, or do I, have any regrets for maybe not being able to have Claude find somebody? I don't have flashbacks, and we always found everybody we were looking for. And okay, there's all these missions going around. There's a couple that have happened here, right? There was one at the ski resort last year. I'm pretty good at the armchair missions. So finally, when Dr. Torgerson was missing, after 12 weeks, I said, listen, I got to get involved. I can't stand it anymore. I didn't have a dog, but I brought in the dog team from Colorado that were really good, and they found him in like under 2 hours. So I help agencies, I get called. Yes. Go ahead. So the question was about post-traumatic stress disorder. It's interesting. I think as I get older, all that stuff creeps up on me. Like at the time, we're young, we're full of, adrenaline, and you're like, I'll put it in the back seat, like with the dirty laundry. And not having a functional human partner, I think that stuff didn't get resolved the way it should have probably in my life. And the more I talk to professional rescuers, all this stuff starts to creep up on you. So I have to be careful of that, at least I'm aware of it. And, I have friends I can talk to. Writing the book there's some black humor in it, because you have to have some black humor.
Would that be resolved on something like you this job?
Yeah, like, I'm thinking, how come I don't have a dog here? I don't need to do that job anymore. I'll let some youngster do it. I'm not interested, really. Yeah. Plus the grizzly bears and the mountain lions. It's crazy to be a search dog handler here. The brush you can't see, you probably will get attacked. And it's crazy, right?
Do you think the dogs understand if they want to, they know it's like that? Do they have a feeling for it?
The most working dogs are like, woohoo! They don't care. Yeah. Give me my toy, give me my hot dog, whatever they, Chimes?
Chime, ding-a-ling. So I have a few comments before we break. First of all, my name is Chel Peterson. I'm on the Lookout Association board. Thank you for coming tonight. First of all, we want to thank Becky for serving as guide and moderator for Sue's presentation. As a token of our appreciation, we'd like to give you a Lookout logo mug. This is 12 ounces. I have my coffee in this every morning.
In that mug?
Not this one. I washed it before I brought it. Anyway, I'd like to present that to you. Thank you. And sort of what I'm hoping is that lets her know how much we appreciate her involvement. And also it's a little bit of a bribe, because what I'm hoping to do is have these two ladies switch places and be our presentation for next year. Okay, so we'll focus on Becky's writing, and Sue can be sort of the moderator. I also want to mention this coming Friday, the Whitefish Review is having a launch party for Our Living Planet. Becky is going to be reading a piece that she wrote for that, Goodbye to the Glaciers.
Oh.
The event takes place at Casey's in Whitefish this coming Friday. Doors open at 6:30, reading at 7:30. There's a $10 suggested donation at the door to support the Whitefish Review. Before we move on to Sue, I want to just mention a couple of our members. Tom and Cindy Roberts, let us know where you are. Okay, right back there. Tom is a very talented artist here in the Flathead Valley, if you're not aware. He's painted several original pieces that we've used in our fundraising and raffles. If you're a member and you received our Christmas card last year, Tom painted that piece for our Christmas card. He's also responsible for the design on our new t-shirts. And I also want to mention that Tom has exhibits right now in both Kalispell and Columbia Falls libraries. So if you have a chance, stop in and look at those, and you get to see some of his remarkable work. When we got ready to decide how we wanted to thank Sue for what she did for us tonight, it was suggested maybe that Tom might paint a piece for us. We asked Tom, and he said yes. The curious thing about Tom always says yes. So we settled on a scene of Sue and Tasha at work from the back dust cover of her book. Okay? This scene right here. Tom painted it, and what we want to do now is present Sue with her original Tom Roberts painting. As a way of sharing our gratitude.
Sweet.
Thank you, Sue.
Wow.
That is so beautiful. Thank you. The artist.
Thank
oh
you,
my
Tom.
God, this is so touching.
Anyway, please get a copy of Sue's book if you don't already have one. Have her sign it. Thank you for coming tonight,
Oh my God.
and let's do it again next year.
I just wanted to mention, for those that didn't hear already, that half the profits we make from these books are donated to the three agencies that are out in the hall there. So.
Oh, awesome, Rocky. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do visit with Sue.
Thanks, you guys. I have to give you the code before you take out.
I hope you enjoy it.
What? The container.